From middle school through medical school, we've all been taught that we're made of organs, cells, atoms, and particles. Our diagnoses and treatments in healthcare today are based on this model of the human being. Yet about a century ago, scientists found that particles are actually made from fields of energy, and particles are not solid things. Think about how counterintuitive this is. The apparently solid objects around you right now, like desks, chairs, and trees, are, at a fundamental level, condensed forms of energy, not just little ping-pong balls bunched together in a particular shape. But we're not just talking about desks and chairs here. The human being, you and me, appears solid to us only because of limitations in our perception. At more fundamental levels, the human being is not a solid structure. So what are we made of? And why does it matter in healthcare? Well, it matters because our diagnoses and treatments, our successes and failures, and our ideas about what is possible and isn't possible in healthcare are necessarily based in the way we frame our problems. And right now, the frame we're using is incomplete and outdated. What exists at the most fundamental levels of our anatomy, deeper than the body, deeper than our cells, atoms, and particles? It's the mind. Now, if you ask a physicist what we're made of, they might say it's fields of energy. If you ask a philosopher, they may say matter. And if you ask a textbook, it might talk about atoms. Where is the mind in all this? Generally, we believe that the mind is created by the brain and located in the brain. Even though all the evidence we have is also consistent with the theory that the brain and the body are experiences of the mind. Just like in your last dream, when the brain and the body you had were appearances of that dreaming mind. The confusion arises because we fail to distinguish between two fundamental levels of the mind, the first mind and the second mind. The first mind is the mind we all talk about and recognize. It's the personal mind, the private inner world of thoughts, feelings, and desires. This is the mind that might be commenting on what's happening around us. It's the mind that we try to calm in meditation. It's the mind that sometimes drives us crazy. But this is not the only mind. In fact, this first mind is just a fraction of the second mind. Think of the second mind like a kind of dreaming mind. The dreaming mind becomes all the characters in the dream, good and bad, successful and unsuccessful, healthy and unhealthy. It also becomes the objects in the dream, like desks and trees, and even bodies and brains. It even becomes the background of space and time. The second mind walls itself off as the individual first minds within the dream. And the first minds are none the wiser. The first mind lives its life within the second mind without recognizing it. The very same thing is happening now. You and I were first minds, individual characters within the second mind all around us. All the objects and events around you are also characterizations of the second mind. That's why physicists say you and all the objects around you are ultimately made of fields that extend throughout space. They're talking about the second mind, without knowing it. The textbooks we've been given in grade school and medical school don't talk about the second mind, simply because we haven't investigated the mind deeply enough to know what it really is. What we've been taught about the mind in school leads us to believe that the brain creates the mind, even though all the evidence we have is also consistent with the theory that the mind creates the brain. Now, the foremost experts, they're divided on this issue, because the most comprehensive answers are waiting within the mind itself, not in a textbook or a test tube. The only way to settle the matter is to investigate the mind. Fortunately, each of us has a custom-built laboratory to do just this. If our bodies are ultimately mental, meaning if they are not just influenced by the mind, but they are in fact an aspect of the mind, a physicalized mind, then diagnosis, treatment, and healing take on a whole new meaning. First, seeing oneself more clearly and completely is a healing process unto itself. It gives perspective and helps us see beyond the narrow frame of disease, decreasing suffering. Second, once we recognize the body is not only a solid physical thing to be studied with scalpels and microscopes, but also that the body can be deeply explored through our own minds, then we can detect deeper mechanisms of healing that so far we thought were impossible. They are waiting within the second mind. Your mind goes deeper than what we've been taught, and it goes deeper than today's science. That doesn't mean it contradicts science, not at all. Rather, it's perfectly consistent with science and also goes beyond it. This domain beyond is yours to explore, and it is the key to decreasing suffering, increasing well-being, and transforming healthcare.